I'm a local loan officer in West Palm Beach, Florida. I've been in the mortgage industry for the last 8 years. I've worked in the industry throughout the country. I've closed over 1,000 loans during my career, so I've seen it all. I'm on a mission to make mortgages both entertaining and educational. Welcome to Lending with Leah. This is the podcast for anyone who is thinking about potentially owning, in the process of buying, or even owns their own home. My name is Leah Bunning. I'm a licensed loan officer, and I'm going to be your host. So before I get started, I actually just got back from traveling a couple days ago. I was in Arizona for a little over a week and a half, and let me just say, jet lag is a real thing. So I am happy to be back on Eastern Standard Time, doing my thing and getting enough sleep. And our last episode that I spent a lot of time talking about fear. Fear just in general, but also fear with the housing market and a lot of common fears that people have. Well, today we're going to get the nicer side to this. So that is, how do we overcome our fears? How do we overcome our fears of wanting to buy a home? So one of the things that I want to discuss with you guys first is that, so I'm going to be a little vulnerable with you guys, and I'm actually going to share probably one of my top 2 personal, scariest situations that I've been in my life and how I overcame that. And then after that, I'm going to give you guys 5 different tips specifically to buying a home and how to overcome some of those fears that you might have. So I think probably mentioned it a little bit in one of my previous episodes, but I was married before, no longer am, but was in the past. Just so you guys get a little bit of a background on it. So I met my ex-husband probably about I'd say a week after I graduated high school. So to really kind of put this in perspective, pretty much the whole beginning of my adult life, I was in a committed relationship with someone. And so this relationship lasted over the course of about 5.5 years total. So about a year-ish of actual marriage, but 5.5 over the course. And I had met him. I was living in Arizona. That's where I was born and raised. And, I had noticed kind of a few red flags, I guess you could say, in the beginning, but not really having the whereabouts of myself or the knowledge yet at that time, at that age, to really grasp and understand it. I just kind of ignored it. And as our relationship continued and progressed, those red flags started to become worse. And they started to become a little more, not just red flags, but abusive. Not in terms of physical yet, but definitely kind of some emotional, mental abuse. There was a lot of poor words used. I got called a lot of names. I was told I was stupid, that I was fat, that I was ugly, that, how could anyone ever love someone like me? Just really, really awful things. And so it got progressively worse. And after a few years, we ended up getting engaged, ended up getting married. And, I had this dream of wanting to leave and move and live someplace else. And I've shared a little bit of that with you guys too, just how I got into the mortgage industry. And I put a lot of weight on still wanting to do that. Even though I was in this really horrible relationship, I still wanted that dream. I wanted to live someplace different. So I begged and begged and begged and begged, for him to move with me somewhere. He finally agreed, and we ended up moving to North Carolina. And I've talked about this a little bit before too. I'd been in the mortgage industry for a few years now. I want to say about 2.5, 3 years or so, working as a processor. And having been in the industry, not only did I have this dream of going and moving away and living someplace totally different, but I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to buy a house so badly. So up until the move, I spent so much time, and I don't recommend doing this, but I did spend a lot of time on Zillow and realtor.com just looking at these houses in North Carolina. And now I did make the choice. I did speak to a realtor, and I did speak with a loan officer. So just anyone out there listening, I am not endorsing just getting on Zillow and looking at homes. I do suggest speaking with a loan officer so you actually know how much you're pre-approved for, and then working with a realtor who can actually, get you more real world information and updated times on the homes that you're looking at. But backtracking a little bit. So wanted this home, and I had my pre-approval, and I had my realtor picked out, and went to North Carolina. So at this time too, I was not living there yet. I just went there. I had some job interviews lined up, and I also had some home searches lined up with my agent. Got 3 different job offers while I was there, and then went shopping for homes and found the cutest, nothing crazy or, extra beautiful, but just a cute little starter home. And I was like, this is it. This is the house that I want. So put an offer in on the home. And mind you, even though I was married, I did purchase the home on my own. So that piece was a little bit scary as well. Just that even though I was with someone, I was kind of taking on the full responsibility of this big expense on my own. If we couldn't pay it, it didn't fall on him, it fell on me. So that was a little scary, but it was my dream. I wanted it. I was so excited. So did it, and went back to Arizona, packed what would fit in our car, drove across the country, started a new job, bought a house, and just started a whole new life. Well, while there, and especially being so secluded and isolated from people, so at this time, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family near me. I literally knew no one in North Carolina at all. So that abusive relationship got progressively worse, and it worsened a lot faster. And I think a lot of that had to do with just the isolation, that I was experiencing. And it went from just a mental and emotional abuse to a physical and very fearful abusive situation. So kind of what led to this aha moment of there's something very, very seriously wrong here was that my ex-husband had started cheating on me with a 17-year-old in high school. And that was kind of the catalyst that made me really go, wait, there's something really awful here. There's something really, and it goes beyond just infidelity, and loss of trust. Like there was something a lot more sinister there, and sought out the help at this time was with a marriage and family therapist, and met with him for about a month as a couple. And I remember him giving me, I think probably our first, maybe second session. And he had given me and my ex-husband this form. It was called the Power and Control Wheel, which is essentially a wheel or different categories of abuse and the different ways that people use abuse outside of just what we might think of as just the physical sense, but whether it's abusing someone through financial means, manipulation, emotional, psychological, all of these things. And I began starting to kind of fight back on some things. And the fighting back increased and escalated the situation even further. I got death threats all the time. Not just death threats, but also threats of, in very gruesome detail, which I will not share here, but gruesome detail on how my ex-husband wanted to torture me and kill me. So really just living in this massive state of fear. And the first time that I tried to actually leave, or the first time that I asked for a divorce, it had been a whole long day, battle and a fight. I mean, I was working in the mortgage industry again as a processor at a corporate office up in the North Carolina, Charlotte area. And the fight just all day, the name calling and the escalation and the threats progressively got worse and worse and worse as the day went on. Got home and, was still holding very firm to, I want a divorce. I can't live like this anymore. And the fight progressed and escalated to the point where he started slamming doors. He started throwing things. He left the room. I followed him into another room. And when I followed him into another room, he was holding a gun. And I think that moment and that fear of, okay, hold on a second. Like, this is my whole life is at risk now. And this just became very, very real and very scary, and I need to take a step back. And after that instance, spent probably it's probably about a month and a half, maybe 2 months before I was actually able to get up the courage to leave. And for anyone who has left an abusive relationship or is in an abusive relationship, or even if it's not abusive, but you're in a relationship and you've been in a relationship for a long period of time that maybe it's not abusive, but maybe it's just not a good fit for you. It's scary. Thinking of leaving is scary. I mean, again, to kind of put this in perspective, was that my entire adult life up to this point, I have never been alone, right? I've always been in this committed relationship with this person. And at this point, we share bills and we split expenses, and I don't know anything different. And, and I don't have family around me. At this point, I think I had one, maybe two friends in North Carolina, but still, I'm like, that fear of, if I leave, am I going to find someone else? That fear of, oh my gosh, if he leaves, like, I own a home. What if he leaves and I lose that income? Like, am I going to lose my house? Am I going to destroy my credit? So all these things on top of the fear of, am I going to lose my very life? And those fears did not go away. And I'll loop back to that as well, is that, overcoming fear doesn't necessarily mean that you're fearless or without fear, but just having the courage and the bravery to, in spite of the fear, choose to move forward. So over this next month and a half, 2 months or so, I met with my therapist, or at the time, our therapist. I had reached out to him from my work phone because my ex-husband was tracking everything on my personal phone, my personal computer, my email. So to me, it felt the only way to be safe in this. So I called my therapist while I was at work on my work phone and said, I don't know how, but I need to get in and I need to see you alone without my ex-husband. And I had the most incredible therapist who helped me kind of come up with a plan, and it almost essentially like a lie that I could give to my ex-husband that would make this make sense without putting him on alert. And I went to see my therapist, and I let it all out, that this is what was going on about the gun, about the abuse, which he also, really had a sense and knew that this was going on as well, but needed me to kind of come to my own realization of it. And when I came to this realization and I told him, and I'm sitting there and I'm beyond terrified, and he looks at me and he's like, I can't see you guys together anymore, because at this point, ethically, I cannot be a part of him continuing to hurt you. And that was absolutely terrifying to me, because I'm like, what do I do? Now I'm on a time clock. How am I going to explain this and all these fears and these emotions running through my mind? And he looks at me and he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want out. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I can afford everything on my own. I don't know if I'm going to find someone else, but I just want out. And he helped me come up with a escape plan to come out, or to get out of the relationship. And I also want to just note to anyone who is in an abusive relationship who is trying to get out, it is the most deadly and dangerous time in the relationship. So make sure to get professional help, if you are in that stage of trying to leave. And had a game plan, had everything set up, ready to go. I knew the day I was going to do it. My dad was going to come up from Florida to North Carolina to help me get out. And I did it 3 days early on 4th of July, 2017, before I was supposed to, because I couldn't take it anymore. And I was so ready, because I said, in spite of all of these fears that I'm feeling, is that it can't be worse than this. And by the grace of God, after that day, he didn't lay a hand on me. He left. He willingly left. And I've never seen him again, ever, since that day. And all those fears, and life was so beautiful after. Being on my own was amazing. So I still say today, I will gladly and happily be by myself for the rest of my life than ever be in a relationship with the wrong person again. I was really able to find that happiness within and by myself. And then in specifics to the home, so what a blessing in disguise that, I did purchase the home just in my name. And the funds I used to purchase were my funds that I saved. They weren't joint funds. We weren't jointly on the title. We weren't jointly on the mortgage. It made that process in the divorce so much simpler and easier. And also for my protection, because since he willingly left the home, that gave me legal grounds to actually change the locks and everything on the home, put some added security in for my own physical safety. But even though it was tight and going down to one income, somehow I still made it. I was never late on a mortgage payment, never missed paying my utilities, never missed paying my car. And that home, so after the split, I was in North Carolina for a couple more months, and you guys have heard the story too, I think the first episode. I got a job offer to move from North Carolina to Florida, and my dad was in Florida. And again, it was that another fear situation where I was like, oh my gosh, I own a home up here. What am I gonna do? Can I afford another home? Can I afford rent and pay the mortgage here? So again, another like set of just fear. But even though I was feeling all that fear and that anxiousness, I called up my agent who had sold me the home, and I told her the situation, and she goes, well, why don't you rent it? So she became my property manager for me, and I became a landlord at 23, moved to Florida, and again, guess what? Still paid all my bills. Didn't miss anything. I was able to pay rent. I had a renter in my home. It covered the mortgage for me, plus a little extra. So not a lot, but about, $100, $200 extra dollars a month. And I kept the home until actually this year, and I sold it when I was 27. And that little home that I took the leap on, that I bought for, I think, $157 when I was living in an abusive, terrifying marriage, not knowing what to do. I was able to sell that home this year for close to $200,000. And just what an amazing experience of taking something so terrifying and awful with fear in all different areas, and being able to turn that into an investment for me, to have landlord experience, not just home ownership experience, but to be a landlord at such a young age, and then to sell it and have those funds to now be able to invest in other areas of my life is such a blessing. And it never would have happened had I not looked the fear and the anxiety and the anxiousness in the eyes and said, in spite of all this fear, in spite of not knowing, I'm going to do it anyway. And I just can't imagine what life would have been like had I chose to stay, or chose to get rid of my home, or chose not to buy because of the fear. If I had let the fear control my life rather than just using it as a tool of, oh, I see you, but we're gonna move past you. You can be there, and I acknowledge you, but we're gonna keep going. And so that is, me just being a little bit vulnerable with you guys, letting you know that just because I'm a loan officer, just because I've been doing this for a long time, does not mean that I don't have or haven't had my own experiences with fear and really dealing with that heart-wrenching emotion, and really learning and having to kind of dig within myself to get out of that. And so I want to share with you guys 5 different tips specifically for how to overcome fear within the home buying market and the home buying process. Because like I talked about last episode, there's a lot of fear around buying a home, whether that's financial, or perhaps, you're in a situation like me where there's some really personal, hard things going on in your life kind of surrounding this process of buying a home, or you were with a significant other and now you're splitting and you're getting divorced and you have to do it all on your own. there's so many different fears around it. And, just kind of like I had touched on a little bit ago, is that, we're not looking to be fearless. That is not going to be, nor will it ever be, one of my tips for overcoming fear is to be fearless, because that's just silly. Me telling you, oh, don't be afraid. Look, it's not gonna do anything. You guys are gonna have fear, and that's okay. And let's acknowledge that. But, without fear, we wouldn't have things like bravery and courage. If you didn't have fear, you could not be brave or courageous, because both of those things require you to move past fear in spite of it, in spite of what it's doing to you, making that choice to move forward. So tip 1 is going to be get clear on where you stand in the process, aka get yourself pre-approved. I know it's scary. I know having some stranger like me dig into your finances, ask you all these personal questions. I know it can be scary, and I know it can probably feel a little bit like you're being judged. And I want to just say that that's okay. It's okay to have those feelings, but knowledge is power. And without a true pre-approval, and without truly talking to a loan officer and knowing where you stand in the process, 1, if you're even pre-approved, and then 2, if you are, for how much, what type of loan, it's important. It's important to know where you stand, and I always like to tell people too, me personally, I'm not ever going to give you a no. The worst you ever hear from me is a not yet, and this is how we get there. And really being able to get a detailed game plan on how you're going to get there and how you're going to make that dream of home ownership come true. Well, once you got the steps, you got something to follow. So even though it's scary, get yourself informed, get some knowledge, see where you stand, and then go from there. Tip 2 is going to be to get a realtor and a loan officer that will listen and walk through your concerns with you. Not all loan officers and not all realtors are in this business for the right reasons or in this business for you. There are some out there that are in this very much for themselves. They're in this to make money. They are strictly salespeople, and they don't really care about you or your feelings. They're just going to push their agenda on you, and they're not going to take the time to really listen to your concerns and your validations. So take the time picking your loan officer. Take the time picking your realtor. Pick one that you feel trustworthy with, that you feel respects you, that listens to you, because at the end of the day, guys, like, your fears are valid concerns, and they deserve to be addressed, and they deserve to be listened to, and we can work through those together. And sometimes your fears are very valid, and it really may not be the best time to buy or the best time to do that refinance. And it's important that you have people in your corner that, one, will let you know that, if something really is not maybe the best financial decision, and that'll just be there to listen to you. Tip 3 is to acknowledge and allow yourself to feel and release these big emotions. I've been talking about it a lot, but fear, it's there. It's not going away. We don't want to wish it away or snuff it away and be like, oh, I'm feeling fear. I'm going to ignore this. I'm not going to pay attention to this. I'm going to go put it over here in this corner. And we don't like it. It's a big emotion. So it doesn't work. So emotions are energy. Energy can't be created nor destroyed. And if you take that energy and you trap it in yourself and you trap it within your heart, it's going to come up one way or another. It might not come up in a way you would think, but it's going to come up in some other form of your life, whether that's high anxiety, or maybe you yell at someone that you shouldn't have yelled at, whatever it may be, it is going to manifest in your life in a different way. So it's important to acknowledge and say, ooh, I'm buying a home, and I just put an offer in, and I just put an escrow deposit on the line, and this is really scary. Like, this is a big move, and this feels like a big, uncomfortable emotion. And acknowledge it. Take that time and just go, oh, all right, I'm feeling you. Take notice in your body where you're feeling it. For me, especially when I'm feeling fear or anxiety, there's two particular places in my body I tend to really carry that fear. One is in my stomach. I get those butterflies, and they are not necessarily like those pretty, like, love butterflies when you see your crush for the first time. You're like, oh, no. These are like the scary, gut-wrenching butterflies, like that, like, ugh, icky feeling butterflies, kind of nauseous. I lose my appetite. I don't like to eat. And the other one that I feel when I get really fearful and anxious is my heart. So not that it hurts or that it's a burning, but my heart it's like it tightens. It tightens, and it's stiff and almost like a throbbing. And so those are my kind of two where I'm like, ooh, if I feel this going on in my body, like there's something going on. And when I have a moment, I take some time, I acknowledge it. And one little tip I will share with you guys too, and whether it works or not, it's something that has personally worked for me when I have been feeling these fearful emotions. So actually from my current therapist now, is that we've discovered that most emotions only actually last about 60 to 90 seconds, but rather it's all the attachments and everything and the thoughts and keeping those emotions locked inside that tends to perpetuate those emotions for much longer than that 60 to 90 seconds. And so she gave me this tip, and it's a yoga pose. I think it's called fire toes. So when I'm feeling these big, fearful emotions, like when I was buying my last house here in Florida and even being in the industry, and I'm like, this is a little scary. I sat down, I did my fire toes yoga pose in the living room, and I set a timer on my phone for 90 seconds. And in that 90 seconds, I allow myself to feel it all. Feel the fear, feel the anxiety, but also in the same time, give myself a little compassion where I'm feeling it, but telling myself too, like, it's normal. It's okay to be feeling this right now, because this is it's a big purchase, and you're putting a lot of money into this, and it's okay to be feeling these things. And then once that timer goes off, I stop the timer, and I get up, and I go do anything else. And when that fear emotion, if it comes back up, I kind of I look at it, and I tell it, and I said, look, no, I already gave you your 90 seconds today. You don't get more time than that. That is all you get. I acknowledged you, I felt you, and I let you go, and now I'm going to move on with the rest of my life. And tip 4 is ask your loan officer to actually run some home appreciation forecasts, and also maybe some rent versus buy calculations. The reason I give this as a tip is because we are, especially here in America, at least my opinion is that we are instant gratification. We want it now. We want to know what is the benefit to me right now. And sometimes we forget about the long-term benefit of something. And So kind of going back to my personal experience when I bought my home in North Carolina. And, initially, my initial benefit is, at least I'll have my house. I can decorate it how I want. I can paint it how I want. And that was it. That was kind of, I was like, ooh, look at the pretty benefits. And that was all I was seeing. But the long-term benefits, I bought that home for $157,000 in 2016. And in 2022, I sold it for $315,000. It was what? I think about 5.5, 6 years. And my home increased, the appreciation went up pretty much double in that time frame. So that was a long-term benefit, and really not even that long-term. That was a pretty substantial gain and return on my initial investment into the property, just with home appreciation. And guys, I got tools that I can actually run some forecasted appreciation numbers for you. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot sit here and say that with 100% certainty, your home is going to appreciate at this value over the next course of years. But I do have tools where we can look at what has the historical appreciation been, what's the forecasted appreciation, how much are you buying the home for? It takes into account things like that, and it'll give you a projected home appreciation forecast over, usually it's like 9 to 10 years that I can do. So ask your loan officer to run that. Ask them to run a buy versus rent, but over the course of a longer period of time. Once you guys have some of these numbers and you're looking not just at the initial or the short-term benefit or cost, but you can really look at the whole picture and you can see the long-term benefit and the long-term cost of this investment. I always tell people numbers don't lie. And it can be really scary when you're like, oh my gosh, all these big numbers, all this money, I don't know what this is going to do for me. But if you got, some solid projections and some solid numbers on the table where you can go, okay, you know what? It's going to cost me this much in a down payment and closing costs right now, and that's scary. But wow, look at everything I can gain on this, that I have the potential to gain on this in just the next 5 to 10 years. So having that, and I think that can help lessen some of that fear and anxiety when purchasing a home, is just really being able to see the full picture. Because whether you're buying a home as an investment property or you're purchasing a home as your primary residence, it's still an investment. So, treat it like, yes, it's your home, but treat it like an investment too, and really get a good sense of everything this could or potentially do for you. And the final and tip 5 is, when overcoming fear in the home buying market, is to just dig deep. Is that we are so much stronger than we think we are. And fear doesn't run us. We run it. It's just an emotion. It's just there. It's just something that says, oh, hey, we're feeling something like this. Let's acknowledge what's going on. Maybe it tells us, hey, we need to pause on this, but it doesn't control you. And all the what ifs and this and that, just dig deep and know that you got you and you're going to be okay. And that no matter what happens, because guys, let's face it, life is a whole bunch of what ifs. I would love to live till I'm 100 years old, but I could die today. It's a very real possibility. But am I going to live my life like that? No. So think the same thing when buying a home, is that even if you have all these fears, dig deep within yourself and say, yeah, there's a lot of what ifs. What if my spouse leaves me? What if I lose my job? What if I can't pay this? What if? I would challenge you to say, so what? What if? You're stronger than you think, and you're going to be okay no matter what. And that is going to close today's episode. So I would invite you all to give me a follow. I am on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, Lending with Leah. And of course, as always, if you do have a specific loan situation or scenario that you would like some more personal one-on-one with, you can always give me a call. My information's out there, and I would be happy to talk with you and talk through any situations that you guys might have. And stay beautiful, everyone.